When people ask me what I think the best Sonic story is, that's always a trying question. Immediately most minds go to SA2, the works of Sonic Unleashed, and maybe even Sonic Frontiers for the newer players. But for me personally, no matter how hard I try to deny it, Sonic and the Black Knight has the best story out of any other Sonic game. And it's not even close in my opinion. The amount of heart and soul that went into this underrated gem of a video game cannot be understated. It is truly a masterpiece that I feel portrays the character of Sonic and his underlying ethos perfectly. It's not a long story. A video with all the cutscenes uploaded to YouTube comes out to about just under an hour if you include the gameplay. It's not the most epic in scope story, with multiple characters and storylines concluding to one final finale at the end of the game. It's just one linear straight shot to the finish line that executes all of its ideas in a damn near perfect fashion. And in this video, I'm here to prove that all to you as we explore why Sonic and the Black Knight is the best Sonic story ever written. For any of those who've played through the Sonic Storybook games, you will notice that there is a drastically different approach to how the OSTs are handled from each game. While Sonic and the Secret Rings seeks to create a more thematic OST that complements the overall aesthetic and style of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic and the Black Knight seeks to create a more thematically resonant OST that correlates more towards the overall story and moment-to-moment happenings within the narrative. What I mean by this is that Sonic and the Black Knight takes a more cinematic approach to its OST, as the music is meant to complement the more emotional moments of the story and creates a more cohesive listening experience. This can be seen in the OST, with there being cutscene music that serve as leitmotifs for Night of the Wind and With Me respectively. One of those songs serves as the final boss music for this game, and its leitmotif can be heard during a certain character's cutscene that subtly hints at their, I'll just say, more sinister nature and true goals. The OST is written like it was made for an actual movie. You can feel like the creators knew what was going to happen beforehand and designed them to complement those events by foreshadowing them in the music. And as such, Sonic and the Black Knight's OST is not only just a joy to listen to, but also adds catharsis as hints in the story are subtly given throughout them if you listen carefully. It's truly great stuff. Not to mention the fact that most of the songs in this soundtrack are just badass in their own right. As usual, I have some of my more personal favorites, such as Molten Mind, Titanic Plane, and Deep Woods as possibly one of the most surreal and beautiful tracks in Sonic's history. This is not even to mention the 5 lyrical tracks we got in this game, 4 of which being done by Crush 40. I mean, for a game with a small budget, they really pulled out all the stops, jeez. And all 4 of those tracks are excellent to listen to, with them creating dramatic weight and tension in the story. But we'll get to that. All this to say, as usual, listen to the OST of Sonic and the Black Knight. I promise you, you will not regret it. Or any of the other OSTs I recommend. Just listen to Sonic music, it's amazing. Okay, on to the thing y'all been waiting for, the story. As I said at the beginning, I feel like this is the best Sonic game story ever told, and there's a lot of reasons for that. For one, I love the presentation of the storybook games. I didn't mention that much in my Sonic and the Secret Rings video, but I just love the painterly aesthetic with the animatic-inspired cutscenes to sell the story. It's so charming and engaging, especially since Sonic's character design works best when he's drawn in a 2D style. And unlike 3D animation and CGI work, it's not too expensive to draw up a couple of gorgeous art pieces in order to present your narrative in a story. And it works perfectly with the overall themes of the storybook games as they are in books, so it's not style over substance. I especially love the little 2D effects and animations they give to dramatic scenes. It really adds a more cinematic touch to this game's presentation. Oh, and when they do decide to use CGI cutscenes, it's that same gorgeous animation style that we're used to in the openings of Sonic. And trust me, when we get to that cutscene, I will be sure to praise it in all of its glory. But enough of that. A story's presentation means nothing if the writing behind it isn't as stellar as well. So what do I have to say about Sonic and the Black Knight's characters, plot, setting, and themes? Well, not to surprise you, but if you think Sonic and the Secret Rings had a banger story, then Sonic and the Black Knight absolutely destroys it in terms of quality. First of all, the voice acting is absolutely on point this time around, with each of the cast members turned up to 11, especially Jason Griffith's Sonic.
It goes by the name Caliburn.
That's kinda sorry looking. Fool!
You have accurate King Arthur mythology integrated flawlessly into the narrative and ethos of Sonic, an amazing twist villain, and a core central theme that is not only resonant to Sonic's character, but is also foreshadowed throughout the entire narrative as a whole. To put it lightly, I feel like Sonic and the Black Knight is the most cinematic that a Sonic story can get, without it just feeling outright like a movie. Which actually might not be that far off since this story is told like a fairy tale. Onto the overall plot itself, Sonic is once again summoned to the storybook world by this wizard named Merlina. I just love this intro cutscene so much. The fact that Sonic effortlessly takes care of King Arthur's dark forces and minions is so funny. It's so amusing to just see how powerful this man is, and it makes it all the more questionable when Merlina stops him from taking out King Arthur, causing him to spill his chili dog on accident. He's even legitimately sad that he lost the other chili dog he was going to eat, which after the suspicious way he ate the first one, I think it's for the best that he doesn't get to eat the second one.
And DeviantArt went crazy that day.
Back on track to the actual story, it turns out that this world's King Arthur got this magical scarab that's driven him mad with power and has plunged his entire kingdom into darkness. It's up to Sonic to get the magical talking sword Caliburn and kick his ass. I like how the story wastes zero time as well, as you immediately get Caliburn, and by the second mission you're already fighting King Arthur. It is here that we get that first brilliant use of OST, as the lyrical track Fight the Knight is only in instrumental form here, showcasing that while Sonic may be powerful, he does not have the power he needs to actually take on King Arthur fully. And can I just say, the epicness of these fights in the game are really underrated. Sonic grinds on the bridge rails, slashes the sword after jumping off of his horse, it's all great stuff. If there's one positive thing you can take away from the 2000s era, they really knew how to make Sonic look cool. But as I stated before, Sonic doesn't have enough power to defeat King Arthur, so he has to travel the land and defeat each of King Arthur's servant knights, Sir Lancelot, Sir Gawain, and Sir Percival, who are just Shadow, Knuckles, and Blaze respectively. Tails and Amy are still in the mix, but Amy serving as the Lady of the Lake, a much more likable character, and Tails the blacksmith, which is honestly the most fitting role he could have in this storybook. Something I want to touch upon in Sonic and the Black Knight story is that it does not pull any punches with its underlying dark themes to the mythos. I mean, we all know this dramatic scene where Sir Gawain tries to commit Sudoku after he loses to Sonic in combat, and other subtle things like the dragons raiding the villages and pillaging them for their treasure. All of this is brilliant to my opinion, as once again it gets to showcase the true-spirited nature of Sonic and just how good of a paragon character he truly is when put in these high-stakes situations. An underlying thematic motif that I absolutely love in this story is the idea that Sonic is actually the villain in this game. Merlina just straight up tells him when he pulls Caliburn for the first time, "Are you ready to be known as the Dark Knight, Slayer of Kings?" And Sonic, with his happy-go-lucky, optimistic attitude, proclaims confidently that he can't always be the hero every time, and that in order to do what he thinks is right, he'll have to be viewed as a villain by others. This single line, this single interaction, characterizes him brilliantly, And I love the way the story utilizes it to its advantage, with the idea that Sonic serves no king, and is, in fact, a knight of the free-spirited wind that blows freely. It's a genius thematic idea that resonates greatly with the idea that Sonic follows his own moral system, and that while he may be brash and not always have everything figured out all the time, he will always 100% do what he thinks is right, regardless of how others view him for it. It's a nice way to handle a Paragon character, as I stated before, as we get to see how these traditionalist knights and their chivalry system react to Sonic's more liberal ideas of freedom and what it truly means to live a fulfilling life. As he states numerous times throughout the narrative,
Isn't there more to being a knight than just serving a king? Huh? I'm out of here. People to save, you know?
I feel like Sonic and the Black Knight's willingness to tackle more complex themes in dramatic stories shows off just how experimental Sonic Team was with the IP at the time, and how unwilling they were to stay complacent. Much like the titular Blue Hedgehog himself, they were constantly moving, changing, and evolving with their character. All of the dramatic storytelling, all of the experimentation with gameplay, it all came to a head in this final Sonic game of the decade. And all of that groundwork and experimentation cannot be seen any better than in the game's titular villain, Merlina.
What?
I shall make this kingdom eternal.
Sonic, get back!
Merlina has this interesting case in the Sonic canon, where she is simultaneously a one-game villain, but also being one of the most complex ones they've ever developed. I mean, the idea of making a twist villain in a Sonic game already seems kind of outlandish, considering she's the only one. But setting her up as the initial companion character for Sonic, only for that to be ripped away halfway through the story, is just truly genius on the storyteller's part. And her main motives and actions also tie into the overarching themes of the Sonic ethos. The groundwork for her betrayal evident from the very beginning of the story.
Why do flowers bloom, knowing they are destined to wither?
Huh?
Their time of beauty is so short-lived. Forgive me, Sonic, but I would be recognized in town. I shall remain behind in hiding.
And if you think about Merlina and her character, her motivations and what drive her are actually pretty sympathetic and understandable. She is a wizard who is tragically familiar with the story of King Arthur, and how his story will ultimately come to an end. Because of that, she fights desperately to create a world in which that doesn't happen. An eternal world, one where the kingdom never moves forward, where stagnation is the status quo. And in one of the greatest, most badass Sonic cutscenes we've ever seen to date, we have to see Sonic flee the scene as his once cherished ally turns against him and decides to plunge the kingdom into eternal darkness. As Merlina's descent into madness unfolds, we finally reach the final act of Sonic and the Black Knight, the story's best moments. While the Knights of the Round Table opt to just give up immediately at the sight of Merlina's insurmountable power, Sonic, once again being his optimistic self, decides to keep on trying even in the most dire of circumstances, and he formulates a plan with the Lady of the Lake to weaken the barrier that Merlina put over the kingdom. And just like that, you play as the 3 other Round Table Knights for the levels in the game. I cannot stress enough how much of a big deal this is, as after Sonic 06, Sonic Team decided to treat Sonic's other pals and gameplay as the plague. The only other Sonic game in recent media that I can think of that has other characters playable in the main story's campaign is Sonic Mania. But that's besides the point. You get to the 4 levels, enshrine your legendary swords into these stone tablets, and weaken the kingdom's barrier in order to infiltrate and put an end to Merlina's rule. This segment of the story is especially peak fiction to me because it displays the essence of Sonic's character to a T. As Sonic raids her capital, Merlina starts to monologue about how she was aware of the kingdom's inevitable fall, and how Sonic trying to stop her only makes him the villain in her eyes. He speaks of the rift between Sir Gawain and Lancelot that will eventually lead to King Arthur being struck down by his own son, and of course, leading to the end of this iconic story. And as she reminisces about how her grandfather only set forth the kingdom's destruction, she describes to Sonic that, one way or another, this kingdom is going to fall. But with the legendary scabbard, she can put an end to it. She can fix the mistakes that her grandfather made. And with that, she summons a delicate little straw flower, a flower representative and symbolic of everlastingness and eternity. This little action immediately ticks Sonic off as he now realizes what Merlina's true motivation was this entire time. She's afraid of death, of things coming to an end. So much so that she's willing to keep the entire kingdom in an eternal darkness, never changing or growing. This action and ultimate goal of hers is the complete antithesis to what Sonic stands for as a character. And as such, he has no choice but to put his foot down and tell it to Merlina straight that living in a world that never ends is ultimately pointless and unfulfilling. That it is the very fact that life does end that makes it so precious and worthwhile. This all rings pretty hollow to Merlina, as she doesn't think that Sonic could possibly understand her sorrow and grief. And because of that, she mercilessly beats Sonic to a pulp, slashing him with her fiery tendrils, making sure to put him down for good. Even breaking the precious sword she had him go fetch at the beginning, Caliburn, as he sacrifices himself to save Sonic one last time. In doing so, putting Sonic in an even bigger fit of rage as he fights till his heart content in order to put a stop to Merlina's evil actions. But it's all for vain, as she's simply too powerful with the power of the scabbard. It is here that we get possibly one of the most emotionally resonant and character-defining scenes in the entire franchise for Sonic. The other Knights of the Round Table are begging, screaming for Sonic to run away, as they know Merlina is going to eventually kill him one way or another. But with his stubborn and cocky self, Sonic simply retorts with the iconic line, "A knight never runs from his foe, right?" Thinking that this is an arrogant display of Sonic's chivalry, they mistakenly assure Sonic that chivalry means nothing in the face of death and that he should retreat immediately. But Sonic assures them,
It was never about chivalry for me. I just gotta do what I've gotta do. That's all.
and we get one of the final uses of Sonic's iconic theme song, It Doesn't Matter, that I have seen perfectly displayed in a video game. The amount of emotion and catharsis that comes from this moment is simply indescribable. The same song that marked off Sonic's journey into the 3D era, the franchise's turn to more serious storytelling and higher stakes, is finally played at the conclusion of this story, where Sonic's morals and ethics are tested to their utmost extreme. And in this moment, Sonic indirectly showcases to Caliburn that he is worthy of that, and thus, after one of the most satisfying, heart-wrenching cutscenes in the game, we get this absolutely badass cutscene of Sonic transforming into Excalibur Sonic, which in my opinion, is possibly one of his greatest transformations ever.
Not understand, nor could you understand. That's why I must do what I must do. I am finished with you.
And with it, commences one of the greatest final boss fights in a Sonic game, as the song that has been foreshadowed throughout the entire narrative, With Me, finally gets put on full display, as Sonic has to take down the Dark Wizard, Merlina.
You know, every world will have its end. I'm here to prove it all to you. I am who you don't think I am. All wrapped up in my evil plan. I can't take.
I love how the lyrics of the song is so thematic and resonant with the overall arc of the game, where Sonic is again not seen as the hero, but rather the villain of another person's story. It simultaneously represents his willingness to accept whatever title life gives him, so long as he's able to commit to whatever actions he deems is right. He's a Paragon character after all, and he changes the world around him, not the other way around. This boss fight is just full of badass lines from both Sonic and Caliburn. It's all really good stuff, and mechanically, this boss just looks and sounds so badass.
This story and the world it created will come to an end. Is that what you wish?
Nah, it's not gonna end. My stories only end when I stop running.
No, it will not be an end, but rather a beginning to a new story.
Your selfishness is going to be the end of it all. Do you not understand?
I already told you, I don't mind playing the bad guy every once in a while.
Everything must have its end, and we are going to be yours.
You never understand my sorrow at seeing the ruinous future of this kingdom.
Good, because I don't ever want to know such one-sided events. Over now.
There is nothing Excalibur can't come through.
But
Merlina, every world has its end. I know that's kind of sad, but that's why we gotta live life to the fullest in the time we have. At least, that's what I figure.
Grandfather.
God, man. Jason Griffith's voice acting, the music, the direction, the artwork, this cutscene is just a masterpiece through and through. You see what I mean? Every single time I try to think of what my favorite Sonic story is, my mind always drifts back to this one scene, this one defining cutscene that showcases Sonic's character so perfectly and why we love him as a franchise. It's because he's just so likable. His personality, his cockiness, his underlying maturity, all of it. It all culminates in a mascot character that simultaneously represents the free-spirited nature of rebellion, while also showcasing the underlying morality of staying true to your ideals even in the face of overwhelming adversity. And to put the perfect little cherry on top, to finish this game's resonant theme of living life to its fullest, we get the final Crush 40 vocal track that rings beautifully as the credits roll, simply titled Live Life. When people ask me what my favorite Sonic story is, even though it's not the most epic one, even though it doesn't have the longest campaign or even the most characters, I will always go back to Sonic and the Black Knight. Its amazing characters and simple theme of everything has to come to an end, so enjoy it while it lasts, is simply so perfectly resonant and emblematic of the Sonic franchise as a whole. When people refer to the 2010 Sonic era as the Dark Ages, what I don't see was an era where Sonic Team and Sega was putting out some of the worst games and experiences they had to offer. What I see is a company willing to experiment with its IP, breaking the mold and exploring new ideas with its own characters. What I see is a gaming franchise willing to take itself seriously in the face of adversity and give 100% of its heart and soul in order to create truly amazing art. What I see are the last burning remains of a talented voice cast tasked with the duty of finishing off the decade with one of their best performances yet, bringing forth a new era of the IP they hold so dearly in their hearts. What I see is Sonic and the Black Knight.